All right. Well, welcome everyone. Very much looking forward to this lecture, Reflections on a Career in Public Land Management, led by Edd Franz, who is the recently retired BLM manager, the Gunnison Gorge National Conservation Area manager. When I first started with Colorado Canyons Association, I was working just down the hall from Edd, and that was January 2020. Soon after, all of that changed, but I was actually able to keep working out of the BLM office because Edd allowed me to use his little office that had a door that was able to close, and that was the requirement to be in a federal building. You had to hole yourself up in a room. So I was able to use Edd's office and enjoy all of his lovely decorations for at least a month there, being one of the only people in the building. So Edd, thank you for that. And thank you for this introduction, I think, to my career in Colorado. It's been lovely working with you. I'm so eager to hear what you have to tell us about. Order of business, we will be using the chat if anyone wants to just add anything to the discussion or ask a question, but we also have the Q&A function on Zoom. So we will have time for questions at the end of this lecture. Please feel free to use that Q&A tool at any point if you'd like to ask a question, knowing that it will be answered at the end of the lecture. This is the conclusion of our winter lecture series, but we will have lots more events throughout the year. So I encourage everyone to keep an eye out on our events calendar and to feel just inspired by this career that Edd is about to share with us. So with that, Edd, thank you so much for your time tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, thanks, Annie. And I really enjoyed working with you too. I learned all kinds of stuff from you about gall wasps and other things, and am so glad that you stayed in service to the public lands. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in to this presentation. And I've had some really great years on the public lands, and love the opportunity to share it with you. And if you have questions, I'm going to try to leave some time for questions at the end, but I can go long, so I'll try and keep an eye on that. Um, yeah. Well, let's just go to the next slide here. My background um, is, let's see. As a kid, I lived in a bunch of places, including California and Libya for a little while. The U.S. used to have an air base there before Gaddafi took over, and my dad got stationed there. But mostly I grew up in southern Indiana, where my mom taught me to smoke a pipe at about 5 years old. No, just kidding. I was posing with one of my father's pipes there. Um, and worked in some retail. That's me on the right there, selling cameras in Columbus, Indiana. But in 1980, a super important event in my life happened, and that was my folks gave me an experience, a life-changing experience, an outward bound backpacking course in the Needles District of Canyonlands National Park. And just keep in mind that 1980 was before the World Wide Web. And in Indiana, the fashion was to wear mountain boots, the waffle stompers, and John Denver was on the radio. And so I got the little catalog and looked through it and thought, well, I want to go to Colorado. I want to do the mountaineering course. So I applied for the mountaineering course in Leadville, and they said, well, that one's full, but we got vacancies in the Canyonlands course in Utah. And I think I probably got out an atlas and said, well, that's right next to Colorado. It's probably the same thing. But it wasn't. It wasn't mountains and pine trees and little babbling brooks. It was a landscape that I had no idea existed on Earth. And I'm gonna use a little bit of I'm gonna go back and forth between these slides and Google Earth today. We'll have to see how this goes. There we go. And let's just go to Canyonlands National Park, the Needles District. And this will probably be a little bit jerky, but I'm going to let it settle down. In the Needles District, you can see here, we've got the Colorado River coming in and the Green River coming in, and then it's just east and south of that confluence. So to give you an idea of what it looks like in the Needles District, if you haven't been there, you just wouldn't think that this kind of landscape could exist on the same planet that I came from, with corn and soybean fields everywhere and flat land. It was phenomenal. 23 days in there, learning how to navigate, learning how to go lightly on the land, and it absolutely changed the course of my life. And I knew that I had to be back in this area, somehow involved with it, hopefully helping to take care of it. And so I finished high school, went to Indiana University, studied biology and outdoor recreation. And let me go back to the other one. Um, and I found there was a bulletin board at the university, and they had a program on there for the Student Conservation Association, which places resource assistant volunteers in the public lands. And I ended up at King Gulch Ranger Station in the Monticello district, Monticello field office. And that's the modern day ranger station. When I was there in 1987, it was just a double wide trailer, no electricity, had to truck water in. It was pretty primitive and pretty quiet. I was there for the spring months, 3 months in the spring. And in the background, you see the two buttes up there, and I imagine many people on this call will recognize those as the Bears Ears. So King Gulch Ranger Station and Grand Gulch, it was Grand Gulch Primitive Area at the time, are now part of uh, the Bears Ears National Monument, and just a terrific landscape. The geology is very similar to the Needles District and Canyonlands, and just loved it there in the spring. So went back, finished college, and started applying for paying positions in the public lands. And I got hired by the Dixie National Forest, specifically in the Teasdale district. Let me show you where that is. Um, it's also in southern Utah, close to Capitol Reef National Park. When the roads come up on this, you'll see the town of Torrey there. And anybody that's been to Capitol Reef has probably been through Torrey. And so I worked in that area. Go back to the slides. And they hired me as an engine foreman. So I'm a fire engine foreman. I'd never been on a fire, but I did it. And I had a crew of three. It was a beautiful district. Had some on-district fires and did a lot of resource work and just kind of grunt labor up there, and it was pretty neat until about the middle of the summer when, and this is 1988, keep in mind, 1988 was the big fires in Yellowstone. So ended up for most of that season fighting the fires in Yellowstone on a hand crew. Came back. The smoke inhalation was not good. It took me quite a while to recover from that, and decided to keep applying for other jobs outside of fire. After tipping chairs at Loveland Ski Area over the winter, I got an offer from Zion National Park, and let's go there. That's down in southwest Utah. It's all this really jointed, sliced up land in here. And let's zoom in for a detail. I should mention that Google Earth has just done a fabulous job on the 3D rendering of these landscapes. It actually looks just like that. Same with Canyonlands National Park. BLM lands, not so much, but the national parks they really did a great job with. And hopefully they'll get to the national conservation areas at some point. So in this job, I was hired as a tunnel ranger. And this was 1989. And the story was that the year before, And this is one entrance to the tunnel right here. It's about a mile long, built between 1927 and 1930, back when vehicles were typically smaller. And the reason they hired tunnel rangers was because the year before they found something like 200 mirrors in the tunnel where vehicles had knocked their mirrors off of each other going by. So they decided to run the tunnel one way each direction. And you'd stand down here with this line of RVs and buses and hold them up till the oncoming traffic came through and then let the others go. I did that job for about a month. It was terrific. Um, I had 10-hour days with an hour lunch, and I'd run up this bridge right here and jump onto the sandstone and go hike around at lunchtime. So that was kind of fun. But only a month until Bryce Canyon offered me a position at one grade level higher as a National Park Service interpreter. So my job was to turn nature into English. So I interpreted the park for park visitors, and you know, another spectacular park, with the famous Bryce Canyon Amphitheater. Let's see, we'll go there real quickly, make a little tour through there. It's on the eastern edge of the Paunsaugunt Plateau. So it's all of this country on the east side, and this is the Paunsaugunt Plateau, very famous for its mule deer herd. And the main amphitheater is just really pretty stunning. It's not truly a canyon, it's just kind of the eroded edge of a plateau. And there are some pretty neat trails that run down into those formations. So if you end up going to Bryce, be sure to at least do one hike when you're there. From there, I was with my girlfriend, Maggie McGee. We ended up buying a house in down in the valley in Henryville, little quaint little hamlet. And worked at Bryce for several years. And she was on permanent. I was a seasonal. She was an outstanding scholar, and they were able to get to her and hire her permanently, which is great because that comes with the benefits. And after a while, she wanted to try something different. So she applied, and there were like 100 applicants for this job, but she got the Pacific Crest area naturalist position at Mount Rainier National Park. Vastly different from the parks of the Colorado Plateau. I ended up being a seasonal interpretive ranger again at Paradise, kind of at the close to timberline on the mountain, which it was at 5,400 feet there. So it's like 6,000 feet is timberline on that mountain. And it's just enormous. Let's go back to the slides. Well, one thing I did want to mention was at Bryce, when I got there, I found they had a couple of telescopes stashed away from an air quality study they'd done a few years before. So I dusted those off and got them out and learned a little bit about the night skies and astronomy and started the astronomy interpretive program at Bryce back in the early 90s. And what a spectacular place for that. Um, but then we went to Rainier, and phenomenal. Typically, it's pretty cloudy there. There was a group of employees that spent their first month there and never saw the mountain. And one of the really great experiences is to go there on these cloudy, foggy days, and then suddenly it clears and this giant mountain shows up in the background. It's really pretty neat. Lots of snow there. I think the year we left, they got 93 feet of snow up at Paradise. Believe that set a new world record. Of course, it doesn't build up 93 feet, it compacts down. And the mountain itself has about a cubic mile of ice on it in the form of glaciers. So we kind of got after 8 months of drizzle every year, we kind of got a hankering to get back on the Colorado Plateau. So Maggie once again applied for a position at Bryce and got it. And we went back down there um, and spent a few more years there. In 1996, we had heard one day that there was going to be a new national monument declared in the area. The next day, it was established. President Clinton went to the south rim of the Grand Canyon to sign the legislation, and a huge national monument, Grand Staircase-Escalante, was born. And just so happened that Maggie and I were planning to get married out on what was now this national monument. So 2 weeks after the designation, we had the first unauthorized wedding out in a place called Egypt, along the Escalante River drainage. And then a couple of years later, first kid came along, and our deal was that I would get the real job, I would get the job with the benefits, and she would work as a stay-at-home mom. And so that's what we did. It took a lot of effort. I think I applied nonstop full time for like 6 months before something hit. And the first thing to hit was a not to exceed 1 year temporary position at Cane River Creole National Historical Park in central Louisiana near Natchitoches. The job was historic preservation carpentry. That's me and little Meg. She turned one while we were there. We were there from January till September or October, and doing historic preservation carpentry work there, working on these old buildings. It was kind of rare to have the outbuildings preserved as well as they were, and they really needed help. This was a building that would have housed two families, and it was originally the slave quarters for the plantation, and eventually became the tenant quarters for sharecroppers. Um, and so that was a fascinating job. Historic preservation carpentry is way different from any other carpentry. You're always figuring out how to lift things up, how to change things without driving a nail or a screw into the structure. Kind of a challenge. But they said this job's not guaranteed. You should be applying for other stuff. And so I kept applying, and finally landed my first permanent job with benefits, and that was a GS5 office automation clerk, kind of a secretary at the Green Mountain National Forest in Vermont. It was 20 hours a week, so it was pretty tough. We had the second kid on the way. Um, Maggie was working at a ski area. I was working nights at the ski area to try to make ends meet, but we were still just flying through our savings, and I was really down. I was getting ready to give up um, the whole attempt to get a federal job when I got a phone call from Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument. And I was offered a career seasonal job, a job 6 to 11 and a half months a year is what that runs, as a visitor information specialist. So working the front desk. And let's go fly to that location. So. And so this national monument, as I kind of implied before, was right outside Bryce Canyon. So this is Bryce here, Henryville, where our house is. It's down here by Cannonville. And then all of this is Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. So we had already spent just years, hiking around, exploring country in there. So, oh, there's the Cannonville Visitor Center where I worked. It was 3 miles away from Henryville, pretty convenient. Glad we kept the house. Um, and then just the landscape is stunning, as many of you know. This is in the Grand Staircase physiographic region, um, place I spent a lot of time in my off time when I was a park ranger at Bryce. I ended up working that job and then worked my way into a backcountry ranger position, which I was mostly stationed in Escalante, Utah, about 30 miles away. Great little office. It was uh, got LEED Gold certification for the building, highly efficient building, really attractive, really blended in, pretty neat. Loved the backcountry ranger work, and had met some good friends there. Did a lot of work there, but Grand Staircase was really a focused on a lot of science, and a lot of education. These are my two girls, Meg and Lauren. Um, they'll now be 26 and 24. Um, but they were poster children for some of our educational stuff. But the real stuff happened with scientific studies. One of the things that we needed to do there was to assess rangeland health on about 100 allotments that needed to have their permits renewed. So this was something that I really jumped into. I had a biology background. I wanted to be part of this. I knew they'd have to make me a year-round employee if I jumped into it, and then it worked. And it was just fantastic. This was a crew doing what we call PFC work, proper functioning condition, going out and doing riparian assessments. And you go out with an interdisciplinary team. There might be a ecologist, hydrologist, geologist, archaeologist, rangeland management specialist, and me. And we would go out and assess the landscape, and then make a determination on how it was doing. And we did this in every wet place on the national monument. It's just fantastic. Um, and then we also did upland studies. We hit about 750 sites across the monument, really exhaustive studies on that. It was just terrific. I ended up uh, applying for the outdoor recreation planner position. I knew I was getting out of the best job I'd ever have as a backcountry ranger. But it was also a really good job. And I did that for a few years. I went from a GS5 to a GS11 at Grand Staircase. It was kind of special. And then one morning I woke up and there was an application for Gunnison Gorge sitting on my placemat because Maggie knew I would be willing to move, but wanted to stay on the Colorado Plateau, and we're just on the edge of the Colorado Plateau. So I applied for the job as a rec planner and got it, and came and worked with Karen Tucker, and she was the first manager of the gorge, and real warm place in my heart for her, and enjoyed that. Um, let's take a look at Google Earth here. Let's go to Gunnison Gorge. It was much smaller. The Grand Staircase was like 2 million acres or close to 2 million acres. Gunnison Gorge is about 63,000, a little more intimate, um, not quite as diverse landscape wise, but I was really glad to get here. It also has one of my favorite ranger stations down in the Gunnison Gorge Wilderness, right along the river. You can see the River Ranger teepee right here, and we use that seasonally, and really has a big place in my heart. Have very much enjoyed um, living in Montrose, working at the gorge. Um, I kind of say we've got everything but an ocean here, and if you count the Adobe Badlands, we used to have one. We've got big rivers. We've got, you know, big snow-capped mountains, 14ers in the area. We've got Red Rock Desert country. It's as all of us that live in this Western Colorado region know, you can drive to whatever place you want to be. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff to do here. And showed you the picture or the image of the teepee earlier. Spent many a time down at the teepee. This was a teepee takedown trip, I believe, since we're all wearing beads. I think it was maybe Rooster's 50th birthday. He's the guy with the great mustache there. He's lead river ranger for the Gunnison Gorge and has been there for the entire history of the gorge. So, very important person. Between Rooster and me is Missy Rogers, one of the longtime volunteers for Gunnison Gorge, has done an amazing amount of work, and she's married to Rooster. And then Jeremy Matlock, terrific river ranger, great friend, and his father. Just an evening at the teepee. And one of the things about the gorge is, it's got that designated wilderness in the heart of it. And that's something that we typically don't get with today's national monuments. The national monuments tend to be a little more controversial. You're not going to get all of Congress to decide to designate a wilderness. But with these national conservation areas, they're the idea is brought up by the community, and then the local congressional delegation runs with it. And if the local delegation is in support of stuff, most of Congress will go along. So we got back in 1999, we got the NCA designated along with the Gunnison Gorge Wilderness. And one of the best management tools for the Gunnison Gorge Wilderness is that it's super hard to get in there and do a boat trip. It's a four-wheel drive road to get to the trailhead, and then when you're at the trailhead, you're still a mile from the river. So if you got the means, and maybe even if you don't got the means, it's really smart to hire Larry Franks to use his mules and horses to pack stuff down and get to the river. Um, and it's kind of a spicy river. It's unlike our other two NCAs in Colorado, which are um, mostly canoeable and flat water, flattish water. The gorge has some real rapids in it, and it's pretty exciting. It's got one of the finest trout fisheries in the western U.S. and just a really special place. And speaking of spicy things and challenges, we've got a lot more going on in the gorge than just the wilderness and the river. It's a big part of the legislation that established the gorge has to do with motorized use and opportunities, especially single track motorized and mountain bike use on our single track trails. And people come from all over to ride these trails. The um, Flat Top, Peach Valley, OHV area is well loved. We've got some good facilities there. We've got a training area uh, where we have kids come and learn to ride. And through our partnership with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they've provided great funding for these facilities and to help staff the OHV, the Off-Highway Vehicle Ranger Program. So I mentioned them as a partner. Um, when I got to the gorge, it was almost a shock for me coming from Garfield and Kane counties in Utah that were very hostile to the national monument and were not supportive. And then getting to Gunnison Gorge, where the communities, the counties, everybody liked the gorge and wanted to help and make things great. And that's just an ideal situation for helping to steward and manage such a special place. So this is not an exhausting list of partners. We have so many, um, and kind of our keystone partnership is with Colorado Canyons Association. So I'm flying the colors today. Got the hoodie on, and Colorado Canyons Association does good work. The impact on the youth and on the local communities in general is strong. You can see this is their 2023 report. I got a sneak peek with their 2024 report, and the numbers are even quite a bit higher for 2024. But contact hours, over 11,000 contact hours in 2023. That's kids with outdoor professionals, with CCA staff, with BLM staff, with Colorado Parks and Wildlife staff learning on the land, both on land-based learning and also on river trips. And that's a huge impact. And you can see the numbers for the engagements by National Conservation Area. Um, Gunnison Gorge and McInnes Canyons are very even with Dominguez-Escalante close behind. A lot of good stewardship work gets done, and we would not be what we are without them. And one of the things that CCA does is they take just a swath, a cross section of the youth of our three counties, Mesa, Delta, and Montrose, and get those school kids, K through 12 school kids, out onto the national conservation lands. And um, it's making a difference. I can see it. The activities that really open these kids' eyes and give them an idea of, yeah, there's really cool things going on the public lands, and maybe even, maybe a job someday. Maybe they could get inspired to work for these lands. This is our Cottonwood Days program that the River Rangers and I started way back in the day, back when CCA was still Friends of McInnes Canyons. And then when they became Colorado Canyons Association and took Dominguez Escalante and Gunnison Gorge under their wing, they kind of stepped in and really, really carried this program, beefed it up a lot. BLM's still involved heavily, but CCA does a lot of the lifting, and that's Annie. She's really doing that along with Tatiana, our outdoor recreation planner for the Gunnison Gorge. I keep saying our gorge. It's not mine anymore, but I still feel like it is. Um, oh yeah, this is on the left. The woman with the fish is a fisheries tech with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. That's at Cottonwood Days, where they've started just this amazing learning station where they actually go out, they use their electro fishing boat, they pull up all the different species of fish that are uh, in the gorge. They're stunned, they're not hurt. But once they put them in buckets, the kids get to see all these things. She came to Cottonwood Days when she was in sixth grade, and that inspired her to look towards a career in resource management. So really terrific, really proud of that. Um, Partnerships on the right, we've got a Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado. That's a state organization that jumps in and helps out. And these folks are working on the rat trails around Ridgeway, doing some trail work there, building new trail actually. Another partner is Western Colorado Conservation Corps. These are youth corps. These are all adults, but they're counted as youth up to age 30. And they've just done multiple times. They've come out and done just fantastic work. This was putting in um, gates to help enforce the seasonal big game wildlife closure and eagle closure in the Jumbo Mountain Trail system, which was um, just designated about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. So really good help on that. That's going to help keep the wildlife in good condition while still allowing some of the trail system to remain open year round. And we also had a VOC, Volunteers for Outdoors Colorado event at Jumbo Mountain, building trail and maintaining trail, doing a little reroute here and there. So good partnership with them. We have people people will just step up and do stuff, man. This is a trash cleanup out at Peach Valley. People are always wanting to jump in and help the BLM out with this stuff, and it's really impressive and meaningful when people do that. Several of these folks in here are employees that I hired. And I'd say that working with the partners, working with CCA, with our counties, with our schools, and getting these fantastic employees hired are the highlights of my career as the manager of Gunnison Gorge. And I'm very comfortable at this point. It's kind of funny. I'm going out um, just as things were really coming together. So got a lot of hiring done, have really good staff in place, and I felt like, yeah, this is the time to let somebody else have a shot at it and take over, and I'll go do some other things. So while I am leaving public lands in one sense, um, you'll see me with my other girls, the dogs, Skylar and Ruby, out on the trails and out on the BLM lands as we move forward. So that's kind of what I have in a nutshell. And so Annie, do we have any questions or anything?
Yeah, well, thank you. Let's take a minute and just let people start typing their questions. Folks, you can put those in the Q&A and or the chat. Um,
Sure. Let,
yeah,
let
and
me let
thank
me
you
go
for,
back.
yeah,
Let me go back and just I wanted to flesh out a little bit more of the difference between a national monument and a national conservation area while
yeah, that
people
sounds
are typing
great.
those in. Um, the national monuments are almost always designated by the president using the Antiquities Act. There is a chance that the Secretary of Interior could do it, but I don't even know if that's ever happened. But so they're kind of, it feels a little more top down, where the national conservation areas are more bottom up. It's the communities. In the case of the Gunnison Gorge, Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Monument, as it was years ago, there was a push for them to become a national park, increase in size. Community of Montrose wanted it. But when they started talking about, well, we'll just add this Gunnison Gorge bit on, people said, oh, no, wait a minute. We still like riding our dirt bikes and going hunting and taking our dogs out there. We still want some of the freedom that BLM allows, but we do want it protected. And so the congressional delegation, led by Ben Nighthorse Campbell, took that process forward, and that's how the gorge got designated. And it seems like a really stable designation.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's informative for a lot of folks. We have a couple questions that have come in while we're on this slide. One question was, which dog is which? You said their names, but can you
Yeah,
identify them?
yeah. Skylar's on the left with the purple halter, and Ruby's on the right with the black one.
Lovely. And I believe they often get featured in the Dogs of the NCA's calendars.
They they are calendar girls.
Uh-huh.
And that is in the NCA. I think that's out on Cool Rock Trail.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of those along South River Road, it looks like.
Yeah.
Um, so do you have a favorite hike in the Gunny Gorge? Terry would like to know.
I would say um, I have several, but I would say the Ute Trail is really cool.
Mhm.
Um, it's kind of the longest and the deepest of the trails in there, at least on the or on the west side. Um, that's a nice one. It gets you views of Ute Park that are just stunning. And you end up down at the TP and campsites, and it's great. I like
Yeah,
that.
I think that might have to be the top of the list for me too.
Yeah,
It's just hard to beat with those views.
it is.
um, we're getting lots of just comments about, thank you for your years of service. Amazing landscapes that you worked in. Looking forward to seeing what you're doing next. Um, I think, you mentioned you keep calling it our gorge, and I think it always will be our gorge. You've been an instrumental piece to the management of that, and I think helping this Western Slope community understand the value of a national conservation area and public land in general. Do you want to speak a little bit more to maybe that piece of value to public land and just what you've seen? You've talked about the partnerships and the careers, but just, yeah, elaborate on that point a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah, these are lands that we all share in common. We all um, pay for them through our taxes, and a lot of people around here help out physically by going out with the stewardship projects that typically CCA leads. I talked to so many people that said I filled a pickup load with trash. Is there anywhere I can put it? A lot of people just taking care of it. And when my girls were little, I'd go out and say, these are our lands. We're like kings. In other countries, they just don't have this. And to be a part owner, 330 millionth ownership, but to be a part owner of these public lands is really special and really valuable. And I've seen, in my case it did, but I've seen it just change people's lives for the better. Um, so, that's super important. If anybody wants to get involved more, Colorado Canyons Association has a membership that's very helpful. Another organization right here in the middle of this list, this West Slope Outdoors Alliance. Um, that's a relatively new initiative that CPW backs up. And that's where everybody's trying to come together, all these competing uses, agriculture, grazing, wildlife, recreation, community uh, development, and things like that, and trying to figure out a common vision going forward where how we can bring in all these players and get to a place that all of us want to live with in our communities. So that's a good one too.
Yeah.
And you can just Google that. It'll come right up.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that plug, too. Um, Someone on here, Angela, is asking if you have any words of wisdom for a 30 something in a national forest or BLM career in the current times, asking for a friend.
Yeah, we're in a weird time right now. Yeah. Um, just keep trying, we'll see where we end up. There's a lot of people love the public lands, the national forests, the national parks, the BLM. I think we'll continue to have really good support and stuff going forward, but we may just have to be a little bit patient while we find our way through. I mentioned it took me like 200 applications to get that first job that wasn't even permanent. Uh,
Yeah.
so it could be hard. There are other ways to get in now. Um, for if you're under 30, the youth corps programs are really good for getting in. I think that's how you got in, Annie, was through your work with CCA and that youth hire initiative. Is that right?
I've never worked for the federal
Oh,
government,
you haven't.
technically,
You haven't. I think of you as one of us.
so.
But
And I appreciate that.
yeah, but just keep plugging. And one of the things I would say is if you see a job that you're interested in, call the person that's going to hire it. Talk to them. When people would call me and say, what's the job? What are you looking for in the job? I'm an open book. I'll tell you whatever. Anybody who calls me, I'll tell
Yeah.
them whatever. And that way you can really tailor your cover letter, your application to what that job really is, because the job announcements are pretty vague.
Yeah. Yeah. I've looked at some of them.
Yeah,
Haven't made it past that, really.
always
Um,
good to make that call.
yeah. Tatiana has a great question. When are you going to volunteer to run an interpretive dark sky program at Ute Park?
Soon, I guess. No, I would love to do that. It's been a long time since I've done any night sky programs, but that is one of the things that came together in the last year that really felt good was getting the International Dark Sky certification for Gunnison Gorge with a lot of work from Tatiana and CCA and Western Slope Conservation Center. A lot of work from volunteers, and that was terrific.
Yeah.
Want to keep those interpretive programs going.
Yes, the general reaction seems to be that we need to get you out for some night sky interpretation. So you can do some brushing up on, your constellations, but uh, you're a great speaker, so I'm sure you'll be able to work some stories in.
Fun. It's fun. The night sky is just being there is so special. If you can learn something along the way, then that's all the better. And
Yeah.
the skies in the gorge are very high quality, even though we're close to some, Montrose and Olathe and Delta have a little bit of light. But once you're in the gorge, it's very, very dark and full on Milky Way, good stuff.
Yeah. Um, from your days leading those interpretive programs, are there any tips that you would give, I think, let's say me and Tatiana, for ways to engage folks about the night sky?
Yeah, there's just a classic book on interpretation by a guy named Freeman Tilden, and it's called Interpreting Our Heritage. And there are techniques for just making it personal to the people. Talk to them. I would always talk to people pre-program as they would gather, find out where they're from, and then I could get an idea of whether you know when it got dark, this was going to be a mind-blowing experience for them, or whether it was going
Yeah.
to be, yeah, that's like the skies at home. And that always helps to be able to know where people are coming from, and then to be able to just throw out a few things that really pique the imagination, like the size of things,
Hmm.
what a light year really is, what would happen if you took Betelgeuse and put it where our sun is. Uh, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars would all be inside of it.
Hmm.
So,
The size of space, that's when it starts getting spooky for me.
right, right, it does kind of expand the mind. That's what I liked about doing geology interpretation too, was getting into that deep time.
Yes. Is there any geology from the gorge you'd like to do some interpretation of right now? Now that you've shown some slides?
Well, um, you know, I there's a great brochure that we have, a little
Yeah.
booklet on the geology of the Gunnison Gorge, and people can come in and ask for a copy of that. We still have a few left, and that's pretty exhaustive. But the Adobe Badlands that you see from Highway 50, and as you approach the rim of the gorge, are those were all laid down in the old Cretaceous Seaway as ocean deposits. That's why when it rains and dries out, we get all that Olathe, I call it Olathe snow. It's the it's the white crust that forms on the soil because there's just so much um, um, calcium and salts and things like that. And it's also why we have a little bit of a problem with salt and selenium in the Gunnison River system. Is it's constantly leaching out of those adobes. Uh,
Hmm.
and then you move on up into the Dakota sandstone. Then when you drop into the gorge, you get into that same black rock that they have in uh, the Black Canyon of Gunnison National Park, and also in parts of McInnes and Dominguez. That ancient black rock that's over 1 billion years old. And Cretaceous stuff, that's that's I don't know, 60 to 9 or 65 to 90 million years old. So you get into much, much older rock formations once you get into that very hard black granodiorite. And it's got those beautiful pegmatite dikes in it that were extruded in there. That's neat stuff.
Yeah. Talking
And
about those.
dinosaur prints, dinosaur bones,
Yeah.
you know, there's stuff like that everywhere.
That leads into what I was about to ask you. You know, you're making me think of fossils and whatnot in all of your career, but I feel like as the backcountry ranger, you probably encountered all kinds of things. And then yes, we have the mirrors in the tunnel. We've
Yeah.
got various fossils. Any other surprises you've found out in your travels, whether it's a really cool fossil or something totally unexpected?
Yeah. You know, I was out um, doing a backcountry patrol um, in the Escalante River drainage, and I came across um, this big area of red sandstone, and I noticed some regular patterns, and I'm like, wow, this looks like a dinosaur track site. So I brought our paleontologist back, and he said, sure enough, yeah, that's probably like a hadrosaur track site through there. You can see little where it dragged its tail in places.
Wow.
Um, I found I found a really big, like a fossilized femur, just squeezed in a boulder up on a cliff one time. Brought him into that too, and he liked it. The danger with taking that guy out, Alan Titus, he's still with Grand Staircase. Fantastic paleontologist, great guy, good musician. Is that sometimes he can't make it to what you want to show him because he's keeps discovering new dinosaurs along the way. It really is that dense in the Kaparowitz Plateau at Grand Staircase. They're just all over and new species all the time. You know, it's the greatest continuous record of Cretaceous age fossils in North America, land fossils.
Man. So you were basically a dinosaur ranger.
I find stuff. Keep looking around. Yeah. And yeah, there was stuff out there, you know, found an old it was written up in a book. So I went looking for it and found an old like a place where somebody had bricked in a little cubby in very remote area. And inside this was a radio and a battery and a 22 rifle and a German World War II German uniform. Crazy.
Wow. Quite a find.
Yeah.
Um, well, folks, last chance to ask any questions. Otherwise, Ed, thank you so much for spending the time both in your career and tonight with us sharing about it.
Sure
Thank you
thing.
for your service, and it's been, yeah, a pleasure working with you. And I look forward to, you know, twisting your arm into some of that night sky programming.
Yeah, and I'm really thankful to all of you for caring to tune into this. I appreciate that, and especially for caring for the public lands. And you know, as we work through this difficult time for federal workers, if you feel like they're doing a good job, or you feel like you want to be supportive of them, I encourage you to just let them know if you know any.
Yeah. Great. Well, Ed, thank you. Thanks everyone for attending, and keep an eye out for some upcoming events this year. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Tuesday evening.
Great. Thanks, Annie.
Bye.